I need your son. Those 4 words hung in the air between them like ice crystals. Mark Stevens stood paralyzed in his doorway, one hand still gripping the knob, the other clutching his coffee mug so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Before him stood Elise Harrington, his boss, the CEO of Meridian Technologies, and a woman who had never once acknowledged his existence beyond the occasional nod in the hallway. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that will touch your heart. Your support means everything to us. Mark's mind raced through every possible scenario. Was his job in jeopardy? Had his son Tyler done something? The morning sun cast long shadows across his modest porch as Elise stood there in her immaculate charcoal suit, her normally composed face showing signs of distress he'd never witnessed before. I don't understand, Mark finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Your son, Tyler. He's the only match we've found. Elise's voice cracked slightly. My daughter is dying. The world seemed to tilt beneath Mark's feet. For 3 years, he'd worked in the IT department at Meridian, keeping his head down, doing his job, and rushing home each day to be there for Tyler. After his wife's death from cancer 2 years ago, Mark's entire existence had narrowed to 2 priorities, being the best father he could be and keeping their modest life stable. He'd never mentioned his personal life at work, never brought Tyler to company events. How could Elise possibly know about his son? Dad? Who's at the door? Tyler's sleepy voice called from inside the house. At 12 years old, he was the spitting image of his mother, same warm brown eyes, same gentle spirit. Mark turned slightly, still blocking the doorway with his body. Go eat your breakfast, buddy. I'll be right there. Elisa's normally commanding presence seemed diminished somehow as she stood on his porch in the early morning light. I wouldn't be here if there were any other options. I've exhausted them all. How do you even know about my son? Mark asked, his protective instincts flaring. The company-wide blood drive last month. You both participated. When the hospital ran my daughter's rare blood type against the database. She paused, composing herself. Your son was flagged as a potential bone marrow match. A perfect match, actually. Mark remembered the drive. He'd brought Tyler along because his son had insisted on donating after learning about children with leukemia during a school project. The irony wasn't lost on Mark. His wife had died from a different form of cancer, but the disease had left its mark on their family all the same. I didn't know you had a daughter, Mark said quietly. Something flickered across Elisa's face, pain, guilt, or perhaps both. Sophia. She's 10. I've kept my personal life separate from the company. I'm sure you understand why. Mark did understand. As a single parent in a demanding corporate environment, revealing vulnerability wasn't an option. He'd lived by the same unspoken rule. May I come in? Elise asked, her usual authoritative tone replaced by something more human, more fragile. Mark hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. As Elise Harrington crossed the threshold into his modest home, he couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. The kitchen was small but warm, with crayon drawings magnetized to the refrigerator and a half-completed science project sprawled across one end of the table. Tyler looked up from his cereal, eyes widening at the sight of the unfamiliar woman in business attire. Tyler, this is Ms. Harrington. She's my boss. You can call me Elise, she said, offering Tyler a smile that transformed her face entirely. Gone was the stern CEO known for her ruthless business acumen. In her place stood a mother, desperate and afraid. Over the next hour, as Tyler went to get ready for school, Mark listened as Elise explained her daughter's condition. Sophia had been diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia 6 months ago. The treatments had failed one by one, and a bone marrow transplant was her last hope. Finding a match outside immediate family was like finding a needle in a haystack, but somehow, against all odds, Tyler's donation at the company blood drive had revealed that needle. I'm not asking for an answer now, Elise said, her hands wrapped around the mug of coffee Mark had offered. I know this is an enormous request. The procedure would require testing, counseling, and then the donation itself. There would be some pain involved, though minimal, and a short recovery period. Mark stared out the kitchen window, watching as the neighborhood came to life. School buses rumbled past, neighbors backed out of driveways, the ordinary rhythm of a Tuesday morning continuing as if his world hadn't just been upended. I'd need to explain everything to Tyler, Mark said finally. This has to be his decision. Elise nodded. Of course. I wouldn't want it any other way. When Tyler returned, backpack slung over one shoulder, Mark asked him to sit down. With gentle words, he explained Sophia's condition and what Elise was asking. He watched his son's face carefully, prepared to shield him from pressure or obligation. But Tyler surprised him, as he often did. She needs my bone marrow to live? Tyler asked, his young face serious. Yes, Elise answered, her professional facade cracking further. Without a transplant, the doctors give her 3 months. Tyler was quiet for a moment, then looked at his father. Mom would want me to help, wouldn't she? Mark felt his throat tighten. Your mom would be proud of you no matter what you decide, buddy. Tyler turned to Elise. Can I meet Sophia first? Before I decide? The question caught both adults off guard. Elise recovered first. Yes, of course. She's at Children's Memorial. She would love to meet you. That afternoon, Mark called in sick for the first time in his 3 years at Meridian. He and Tyler followed Elise's sleek black car to the hospital, the silence between father and son filled with unspoken questions and concerns. Children's Memorial was bright and colorful, designed to feel less clinical, but nothing could fully mask the reality of what happened within its walls. As they walked through corridors decorated with cartoon characters and inspirational quotes, Mark felt the weight of memory press down on him. He'd spent too many hours in hospitals during his wife's illness, watching helplessly as cancer stole her away piece by piece. Sophia's room was at the end of the oncology ward. Elise paused outside the door, her hand on the handle. For a moment, she wasn't the CEO of a Fortune 500 company but simply a mother preparing to introduce a stranger to her sick child, a stranger who might hold her daughter's life in his hands. She has good days and bad days, Elise said quietly. Today is somewhere in between. The girl in the hospital bed seemed smaller than her 10 years, her skin pale against the white sheets, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf. But her eyes, the same piercing blue as her mother's, were alert and curious as they entered. Mom? You're back early, Sophia said, her voice surprisingly strong. I brought some people I'd like you to meet, Elise replied, moving to her daughter's side. This is Mr. Stevens and his son, Tyler. Sophia's gaze shifted to Tyler, who stood awkwardly beside his father. Are you the boy with the matching bone marrow? Tyler nodded, stepping forward. I might be. I haven't decided yet. Mark watched as his son approached the bed, expecting him to be intimidated or uncomfortable. Instead, Tyler pulled up a chair and sat down. Does it hurt? Being sick like this? Tyler asked. Sophia considered the question. Sometimes. The treatments hurt more than the disease most days. But the worst part is missing stuff. School, soccer, sleepovers with my friends. I missed a lot of school when my mom was sick, Tyler offered. She had cancer too. Did she get better? Sophia asked, hope flickering across her face. Tyler glanced back at his father before answering. No. She died 2 years ago. The room fell silent. Mark felt his heart breaking for his son, for this brave boy who had endured so much and still found the strength to sit beside another child's sickbed. I'm sorry, Sophia said finally. That must have been really hard. It was. It still is sometimes. Tyler reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth stone. This was hers. She collected rocks from every place she visited. This one's from the beach where she and my dad got married. I carry it for good luck. Sophia reached out, and Tyler placed the stone in her palm. It feels warm. That's because I always keep it in my pocket, Tyler explained. Mom said stones absorb energy from the people who hold them. As the children continued to talk, Mark found himself standing beside Elise near the window. Outside, the city sprawled beneath them, people going about their lives, unaware of the small drama unfolding in this hospital room. He's remarkable, Elise said softly. You've raised an extraordinary son. Mark watched Tyler, who was now showing Sophia his collection of Pokemon cards that he'd brought in his backpack. His mother deserves most of the credit. She taught him compassion. And you've nurtured that gift since she's been gone, Elise countered. That's no small thing. For the first time, Mark really looked at the woman beside him, not as his intimidating boss, but as another parent fighting for their child. The perfectly tailored suit and carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes or the worry lines that hadn't been there a year ago. How have you been managing? He asked. Work, the hospital, all of it. Elise's smile was tired. One day at a time. Some days better than others. Alone? Sophia's father hasn't been in the picture since before she was born, Elise said, her tone matter-of-fact. My parents help when they can, but they're getting older. My assistant knows the situation and covers for me when necessary. Mark nodded, understanding all too well the balancing act of single parenthood. It's not easy. No, Elise agreed. But necessary. They watched as Tyler carefully explained the rules of a card game to Sophia, who was sitting up straighter now, color returning to her cheeks as she engaged with her visitor. I want to do it, Tyler announced suddenly, looking up at the adults. I want to donate my bone marrow. Mark moved to his son's side. Are you sure, buddy? This is a big decision. Tyler nodded, his young face solemn. I'm sure, Dad. Sophia needs it more than I do. Mark felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. In that moment, his son seemed older than his 12 years, wiser somehow. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly, her small hand reaching for Tyler's. "I promise I won't waste it." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of medical appointments, tests, and preparations. Mark was surprised when Elise arranged for him to take paid leave from work, assuring him his position would be waiting when he returned. "It's the least I can do," she said when he tried to protest. "Besides, the company can survive without its IT manager for a few weeks." The day of the procedure dawned clear and bright. Mark sat beside Tyler's hospital bed, watching as his son chatted animatedly with the nurses, seemingly unfazed by what lay ahead. "Are you nervous?" Mark asked during a quiet moment. Tyler considered the question. "A little. But Mom had to go through way worse stuff with her treatments. And Sophia too. Your mom would be so proud of you," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I am." Tyler smiled, the same smile that had kept Mark going through the darkest days after his wife's death. "I know, Dad." The procedure itself was relatively straightforward. Tyler was given anesthesia, and doctors extracted bone marrow from his hip. He would be sore for a few days, the doctors explained, but there would be no lasting effects. His body would regenerate the donated marrow within weeks. While Tyler was in surgery, Mark found himself in the hospital chapel, not praying exactly, but thinking of his late wife, wishing she could see the man their son was becoming. He was surprised when Elise joined him, sitting quietly in the pew beside him. "Sophia's receiving the transplant now," she said softly. "The doctors are optimistic." Mark nodded, unable to find words adequate for the moment. "I've been unfair to you," Elise continued after a pause. "To all my employees, really, but especially to you." "What do you mean?" "I've cultivated this image, the Ice Queen CEO who cares only about quarterly results and market share. I've kept everyone at a distance, convinced myself it was necessary for respect, for success." She shook her head. "But all it's done is isolate me when I needed support the most." "You were protecting Sophia," Mark suggested. "Keeping your vulnerability private." "Perhaps. Or perhaps I was just afraid." Elise turned to face him fully. "Your son is giving my daughter a second chance at life. And I didn't even know your name until 3 weeks ago. What does that say about me as a leader? As a person?" "It says you're human," Mark replied simply. "We all build walls when we're scared." The recovery room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Tyler was sleeping peacefully, the anesthesia still working its way through his system. Mark sat beside him, a dog-eared paperback open but unread in his lap. A soft knock at the door drew his attention. Elise stood there, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "May I come in?" she asked. Mark nodded, gesturing to the chair on the other side of Tyler's bed. "How is he?" Elise asked, her voice hushed. "Doing great. The doctors say he can go home tomorrow if everything continues to look good." "And you? How are you holding up?" The question caught Mark off guard. Few people asked how he was doing these days, most assumed he had adjusted to widowhood, to single parenthood. "I'm okay," he said automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, I'm exhausted. Worried. Proud. Grateful. All of it at once." Elisa's smile was understanding. "I know that feeling well. How's Sophia?" "The transplant went smoothly. Now we wait and hope her body accepts it." Elisa's composure slipped slightly. "The next few weeks are critical." Mark reached across the bed, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Elise took it, her fingers cool against his palm. "Whatever happens," Mark said, "Tyler and I are here. You're not alone in this." Something shifted in Elisa's expression, a softening, a surrender of sorts. "Thank you." The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Tyler returned to school, his recovery complete, though he insisted on weekly visits to the hospital to see Sophia. The two had formed an unlikely friendship, bonded by circumstance but sustained by genuine affection. Sophia's recovery was slower, more precarious. There were setbacks, infections, complications, but gradually, incrementally, she began to improve. Her blood counts stabilized. Her strength returned. 6 months after the transplant, her doctors used the word remission for the first time. Mark returned to work at Meridian, but things were different now. Elise had undergone a transformation of sorts. She was still demanding, still focused on excellence, but there was a new dimension to her leadership, a humanity that had been missing before. She instituted flexible work policies for parents, established a company foundation focused on pediatric cancer research, and began appearing at company events with Sophia at her side. And then there were the dinners. It started with a thank-you meal at an upscale restaurant, just the four of them, Mark, Tyler, Elise, and a recovering Sophia. But one dinner became 2, then 3, then a regular Friday night tradition. Sometimes they ate at restaurants, sometimes at Mark's modest home, occasionally at Elisa's sleek downtown apartment. "Are you and Ms. Harrington dating?" Tyler asked one night as Mark tucked him into bed. Mark paused, considering the question. "Would that bother you if we were?" Tyler thought about it. "No. I like her. She makes you laugh. You didn't laugh much after Mom died." "Your mom would want us to be happy," Mark said carefully. "But she'll always be your mother, and I'll always love her." "I know, Dad." Tyler yawned. "But maybe there's room to love Ms. Harrington too. And Sophia. Like an extra family." 1 year to the day after Elise had appeared on his doorstep at 7 a.m., Mark found himself standing in the same spot, this time preparing to leave rather than receive a visitor. Tyler was already in the car, impatient for their weekend camping trip to begin. His phone buzzed with a text message.